I'd like to introduce our MC for this morning, Sarah Hand. A little bit about Sarah. As an entrepreneur, she uses her strengths to find and leverage unique value props and create partnerships. She has worked with global venture resource partners. Better? Okay. I'll say that again. She's worked with global venture resource partners, Scale Group, and cross-border angels on global investment, international market expansion, and facilitates company exits through her extensive network. Her recognized accomplishments have presented opportunities with the State Department, the UN, and the 2015 Harvard Future Ready Economy Summit, and the 2016 Harvard Digital Life in Latin America Symposium, and the 3.0 Leaders Conference. Sarah, take it away.
So I have to tell you, I am thrilled to be here at TiECON. We have said through our work in community building that our communities demand leaders that collaborate together, and Commissioner Merman said that. TI is a collaborative organization. They recognize and accept and invite entrepreneurs, investors of all different ethnicities from all places in the world to contribute and participate in the work that they do. And they write checks. That's a big deal in today's world. There are a lot of organizations that say that they support entrepreneurs, but they're not there with the time and the effort and the financial resources that are necessary. So I'm thrilled to be here at TiECON to be an MC for you this morning, and I'd like to invite Ramesh to come back up and introduce our next speaker.
It's a very special day for me. In 1998, I made money on Exodus in the stock market. For the past 3 years, I've been every trip to Silicon Valley. There's one person I always seek out and say, please come to Tampa. And that's going to be our grand opening keynote speaker for this wonderful day of celebration of entrepreneurship. I'll quickly go through his bio, though you have all read about it. B.V. Jagdeesh is the managing partner at Koch Ventures. And through that, he has invested successfully in companies such as NetMagic, Ocarina Networks, and they all had exits, by the way, Ankina, to name a few. And before founding Koch, he served as the founding investor and CEO of NetScaler. And that was sold successfully to Citrix. So that is his Florida connection. He sold it to Citrix for $325 million, $325 million. And that is his Fort Lauderdale connection. And I just learned over this weekend that Jagdeesh is the reason that Citrix has a presence in Silicon Valley. So they are who, Citrix is in Silicon Valley. He also, prior to that, co-founded and served as CTO of Exodus Communications in 1993, which pioneered the concept of internet data centers. He was instrumental in the successful IPO in 1998, and at its peak in 2000, had a market cap of close to $28 billion. We have been taking tours of the USF Connect here, and have been hearing very inspirational words. Jagdeesh is not only a very successful entrepreneur, he's a very active investor, he's a mentor, a coach, a philosopher, a teacher, and most importantly, he's here to give his time to help out entrepreneurs in Florida. So it's my great privilege to welcome to the stage our chief keynote speaker, B.V. Jagdeesh.
Good morning. Thank you, Ramesh, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here at the Tampa. You know, this is the other bay, right? The San Francisco Bay and the Tampa Bay. And the way that we know is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? Now it's time for us to create a second Silicon Valley out of Tampa Bay. And as I learned over the last several days about some of the wonderful startups that have come out of here, right? This is all the momentum. I mean, Jabil was founded here, which is a $17 billion in revenue, which has provided jobs, 40, 50, 100,000 people. And then Home Shopping Network, which was also born here. And this company that I sold to, NetScaler, which was sold to Citrix, is also born in Florida, out of Fort Lauderdale, which is today a market cap of almost $13, $14 billion. So there is a lot of entrepreneurship activity here. It's a matter of taking that and moving to the next level. And with this, hopefully, the direct plane that connects between Silicon Valley and Tampa Bay, we should be able to establish a better relationship, because I personally feel Silicon Valley cannot be the only innovation hub. You have to have multiple other locations just from a simple health point of view, you know? I mean, the entrepreneurial health point of view. So that's the mission of TiE. If you go back and look at what Commissioner talked about, right? It so aligns with the TiE mission. I mean, at the end of the day, TiE basically has three things, and it talks about three things. Number one is entrepreneurship is the best remedy to solve two different issues. One, it solves a fundamental problems that exist in the society through innovation. And number two, while doing this, it creates lots of jobs, which is basically what the commissioner was talking about as well, right? Creating jobs is a very, very, very important aspect. Number two is, while creating these companies, while the entrepreneurs create these companies, there is absolutely nothing wrong in creating wealth. Absolutely, there is nothing wrong in creating wealth, right? Whether it's for entrepreneurs, whether it is for investors, whether it is for employees, right? That's the way you continue to invest more and continue to innovate more. And number three, the best way to make number one, number two happen is by associating with people who have already been successful, who have been there, done that, and have them come back and help the next generation of entrepreneurs to do number one and number two. This is very simple, right? So entrepreneurship solves problems in terms of producing new products and new innovation and creating jobs. And during the process, creation of wealth is absolutely acceptable. And number three is, as you become successful, come back and give your time to help create the next set of entrepreneurs. I'm a recipient of this formula back in 1993, and this is precisely what I'm doing right now as I invest in these next generation of entrepreneurs, both in Silicon Valley and in India. This is exactly what I do. I give my time. I help entrepreneurs to not make the same mistakes that we did back in 1993. So mistakes will always be made, but make new mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes, right? So that's the whole mission of TiE, and I'm very honored that Ramesh, who has been pursuing me for the last 2.5, 3 years, and finally, I'm here. So it's also the wonderful hospitality. Ever since we landed here, my wife and I, the hospitality experienced by Ramesh and also Valerie yesterday at the Innovation Hub. Thank you so much for the wonderful hospitality that you extended to us. So with this, I thought I'll just share my journey in this country and as an entrepreneur, and what I have learned and how I'm applying those learnings, both on the business side as well as on the philanthropic side. And it's pretty fascinating that the learnings that you have gone through, how you can apply to optimize the next set of companies and the next set of entrepreneurs. Just like many of the immigrants, I came with the dream to United States of America back in 1982. That's almost like 34 years ago. As a young engineer who got inspired during my master's degree in Bombay, I got the internship in a very, very young company whose founder was a PhD from Case Western Reserve University. And I got very inspired about this whole concept of the entrepreneurship. As I saw this young company grow from 5 people into 100 people company, just about 1.5 years of my stay during my master's education. And that is the time somehow it hit me that one day I'm going to start my own company. So I came to the US in 1982, and I worked for about 11, 12 years in various companies, built specialization in computer networking. That was my competence, basically, core competence. And in 1993, I was very fortunate to meet this partner of mine, KB Chandrasekhar, in a simple social gathering. And somehow we connected very well. It's not like we had worked with each other before. It's not like we had a professional relationship or even a personal relationship. We somehow clicked, and the relationship and the expertise that we both had was very, very, very complementary. So he had sales and business skills, and I had technology and lots of connections because I was already in the Valley for almost 12, 13 years. So that's what led to the creation of Exodus Communications. But unfortunately, we were not one of those who had the pedigree to get the funding from the venture capitalists. So the venture capitalists typically look for a certain pedigree, whether you've already done this before and successful, whether you come from some top-notch institutions, you have done some unbelievable innovation, or you're a well-recognized person, right? They look for those kind of things. So both of us didn't have that kind of a pedigree to get the funding. But that did not stop us from continuing our dream, pursuing our dream of doing our own company. So we ended up starting a consulting company which earned some income, and then every penny that we made out of that consulting business, we put back into Exodus Communications. And we reached a stage where by the end of 1995, within about 2.5 years, we reached a stage where we had a run rate revenue of about $3 to $3.5 million. So that's when we started to get a lot of attention. And that is when we bumped into the TiE founders, Kanwal Rekhi and Suhas Patil, who were very gracious enough to look at us, and actually during the most critical time of our life, these people wrote almost like $500,000 check. That was the start of the funding of Exodus Communications. And I have to say, without that funding, I'm not sure whether I would be standing here and then talking to you guys. And Kanwal was very instrumental in bringing professional venture capitalists that led to, in February of in 1996, that led to the first round of funding. Yes, of course, the valuation was very harsh. Even though we had $3 to $3.5 million of run rate revenue, we raised about $3.5 million, and we pretty much gave up almost 50% of the company. 50% of the company. Number one, we had no choice. Number two, we thought, hey, let's make this big. I mean, by then, we already had started to see the TAM, the total addressable market size, to be massive. And we thought, perhaps maybe we can turn this into a much bigger entity, which is essentially what happened over the next couple of years. And there was no looking back after that. So we raised the first $3.5 million, and then we went on to build the internet data centers, which was an unheard of concept at that time, where we hosted the who is who of the internet companies. I mean, any company that you can think of, right, today, whether it's Microsoft or eBay or Yahoo or Google or Amazon, every one of these companies basically was under the umbrella of Exodus Communications. And we grew from $2 million to $12 million in 1997 to $50 million in 1998. That is when we decided to take the company public. And then we grew from 50 to almost $250 million the following year to almost like $700, $800 million in the year 2000. So which is a pretty remarkable growth, absolutely remarkable growth. So this was the time when the customers, especially the enterprise caliber customers, they wanted to outsource their internet crown jewels into Exodus. They looked at us, both of us, you know, what kind of a background these guys have. Can they really handle our crown jewels? So that's when we decided to get someone from IBM to help us out to run the company. And we stayed until middle of 2000, and as the company started to get bigger and bigger, by middle of July timeframe, my hands were itching, and I had funded this other company called NetScaler, which is to solve a growth problem that we were facing in the internet. And I had funded this company, and my investors basically said, hey, you understand this company very well, you should come and run this company. And so that is when I left Exodus in the middle of July of 2000, and I went and become part of this NetScaler to be the CEO of the company. And unfortunately, Exodus went through some rough times, and then eventually, you know, it got sold to Cable and Wireless, and then to Savis, and now to CenturyLink. CenturyLink actually owns most of Exodus Communications. But in the meantime, I got into NetScaler, and this is the time when there was the dot-com crash. So the interesting part of NetScaler was the whole company was founded with an assumption to reduce the number of servers in a data center, right? Using certain technology that we had developed, we were going to reduce the number of transactions that happen in the server. As a result, the load on the server would dramatically come down. So the model had suggested that for every 20 servers that you needed before, if you put a NetScaler in between, you needed only one server. So we would offload a lot of the functionalities that the server was doing. So this is the interesting part. So come 2001, we had our first product that got released. And by then, 9/11 had hit, the market had crashed, right? Everybody was like scrambling to survive. And this is when I go in front of the chief technology officer at Charles Schwab, and I'm pitching NetScaler as to the value that NetScaler brings to the table in terms of reducing the number of servers. So here is the CTO taking me through the charts of projections of the amount of traffic growth that they had anticipated. You know, as a financial company, you have to plan your infrastructure almost like a year in advance, right? So the market guys had basically given the projection of what the market growth is going to be in 2001 and 2002, right? This was given in 2000. So the CTO and his team had built the whole infrastructure to handle that exponential growth. You can very well imagine, right, what was going on in 2000, 2001. And based on that exponential growth, essentially, he had deployed all the infrastructure for the demand. Now, here I am pitching, Mr. CTO, here is our technology. This is how I can reduce the number of servers that you have in your data center. So he looks at me and he says, Mr. Jagdeesh, I have all these servers that is absolutely unused, and my projection of the traffic was like this, and today it's almost like it had fallen off the cliff, right? The traffic demand had literally fallen off the cliff. And majority of my servers are being unused, and if you are interested, actually you can take some servers and do whatever you want with it. So the whole equation is turned around, right? This was the biggest challenge at that time as to what are we going to do with this company. So then we went back to our investors and we said, look, the market for which this product was built does not exist. And we gave 3 options to our investors. We went and said, number 1, we can return your money back on a 25 cents on a dollar, right? And number 2, we can basically go and completely bring down the company to few minimum engineers and then go and work on a totally new product. Or number 3 is take this current product and build certain additional security and other functions to reposition the company. So the board looked at us and said, look, you guys understand this very well. Go with option number 3, and we needed about 9 months to re-engineer the product and then bring the product. So this happened like immediately post 9/11. So we had to take some tough decisions in terms of reducing our employees in Silicon Valley, and we made some bold moves at that time to open up an office in Bangalore. In fact, we were one of the very first product companies, right, to open up a shop in Bangalore to continue the R&D momentum, right, at a lower cost. And in fact, if we hadn't done that, we probably would have run out of money. So knowing the amount of money that we have, we managed the cash in such a way that we got the product out, and we got ourselves like another 3 to 4 months of time for that product to click. And literally everything just worked like a clockwork. We brought the product out into the market May of 2002, and we started to get some traction. And Q1, after we shipped the product, which is the July to September, we had $350K, and then Q2 we had like $650K or something like that in revenues. That's what led to Sequoia Capital investing in NetScaler, and then we continue to grow. And in 2005, Citrix literally made a cold call to come and acquire NetScaler, and because it was almost like 8, 9 years old, and a lot of the employees, especially the engineers, had gone through these rough moments, and they had never seen any liquidity, we decided it's best to actually sell the company rather than us going all the way IPO ourselves. Hindsight, if you ask me today, what I realized was building a company to the stage where we were almost like $60 million in revenue. Building another company to that stage is not easy, because 0 to $60 million revenue, that's the hardest part when you're going through the initial cycles of building a company. But nevertheless, from a financial return standpoint, everybody was a winner. The old investors of NetScaler was a winner. The new investors were obviously winners. All the employees were winners, right? So, and Citrix was a winner. In fact, today, going back to the commissioner's point, today, NetScaler, through Citrix, has created almost 1,000 jobs in the United States. And it generates almost like $1 billion in revenue. $1 billion in revenue, right? From where we gave NetScaler to Citrix. So I stayed with Citrix for a bunch of years, and then I did a few other companies after that. But now I'm basically settled with my own angel investment firm that I have called the Kaj Ventures, where we invest in early stage companies. I work with a whole bunch of Silicon Valley venture capitalists, and I help bring several companies. In fact, most recently, about 3 weeks ago, one of my companies that I got involved almost 6 years ago went public on the NASDAQ, a company called Nutanix. So once again, this company has created almost 2,500 jobs, right? And it has a market cap right now of about $4.5 billion with revenues of about $650 million. Pretty impressive. So the goal is how you come back and help the next generation of entrepreneurs. Now, during the process, I have succeeded in bunch of companies, and I've also failed in bunch of companies, which has led me to learn a lot. So both as a person running the company, I have failed, and as an investor, I have failed in a couple of companies. So if I go back and analyze between the success and the failure, it just feels to me that there is this fine line between that success and the failure. And I try to analyze, and I say, what could be the 2 or 3 takeaways, common takeaways, right, that happens between success and the failure? Ultimately, it comes down to 3 things. Number 1 is the people, and I'll go a little bit into detail in each of this. Number 1 is the people. Number 2 is the product market fit, right? The product that you are developing, what is the fit to the market? And I'll go a little bit detail, and I'll also give you some examples. And number 3 is the financial discipline. So ultimately, it just comes down to these 3 things: people, product market fit, and financial discipline. So let's talk quickly about people. People, as the example that I gave you of the NetScaler or even Exodus, right? How we had to go through scenarios when you have especially challenging times, especially when there is a market downturn, especially when the market is not accepting your product. It's the people who are listening to the customers as to what else that can be done. Ultimately, it comes down to that. If you don't listen to your customers, if you don't listen to your employees, right, and if you just keep going in the same direction, it will be hard to find that success. So people also make or take correction or corrective steps very quickly, right? And good people hire excellent people. So you want to make sure, right, especially the first 20, 30 people that you have in your company, right, are absolutely better than you are, right? You should be shooting for that, because the good people that you have will hire very good people. If you hire bad people, they don't want to hire good people, right? Then it's all going south. Now, second, which is the product market fit, right? It's very rare, very, very, very rare that a company that starts with some assumptions at the time when the company got created about what the market is very rare that is what the target would be. It will change because of so many market dynamics. And when that change is happening, you should be listening and you should be figuring out what is the market that I need to take this product into, or what is the market that appreciates the value of the product that I have built, right? I mean, if you can take several examples. One is my own NetScaler as an example. Figuring out that post 9/11, when this market fit did not happen, and by talking to the customers, right, figuring out that this whole security and optimization is what potentially the market wants, and bringing that product and very clearly identifying who that customers are. So we went after all the e-commerce, e-businesses, or the financial institutions which had the web presence, right? Companies like that became our target customers, and precisely we executed without going in 100 different directions, right? So that's where saying no to a lot of the requests that are coming. And because saying no is hard. You have to think 100 times as to why am I saying no. There is a lot of thought process, because saying yes is actually very easy. And if you keep saying yes to everything, right? Okay, I'll go after this customer. Okay, I'll develop this product. Okay, I'll develop this functionality. You won't go anywhere. I mean, the whole fundamental premise of startup is all about laser sharp focus. You have limited dollars and you have limited resource, right? So you have a strength, you have a innovation, and you got to figure out where that innovation is applicable. Okay, so a lot of big companies also make this mistake. I mean, if you think of from the product market fit, right? Most recently, I'm sure you have heard of Google Glasses. Google Glasses, billions of dollars was invested in Google Glasses. Didn't go anywhere because they were trying to fit this into consumer market rather than looking at potentially being used by the customer support people or by people who need to use both their hands while they're repairing certain things. You can wear that glass and you can be actually looking at the content to fix things, right? So instead, they started to position this, the target market, as a consumer market. It just backfired. I mean, I'm sure many of you would have heard of Motorola tried some 15, 20 years ago a satellite phone. I don't know if you remember this. I mean, this was like over $1,000 phone, really big one. And the goal of this, right, is this would work in any forest or any mountains or anything, anywhere in the world. Where was the market? Who was going to pay over $1,000 for a phone, right, to get this access? And how often you actually go to these places and how often you actually need, and how many people actually need this product. So even big companies make these mistakes of this whole product market fit. And lastly, this whole financial discipline, right? I mean, I saw this at Exodus, the mistakes that were made by the person that we hired, not knowing the financial discipline. And I also saw, the changes that we made at NetScaler, how it resulted. You had to take some tough decisions and reduce your expenses, and it resulted, in a successful market penetration of your product. So I think it ultimately comes down to these three things: the people, product market fit, and the financial discipline. And the next generation of entrepreneurs, right, following these three rules and disciplines, I have a good confidence that entrepreneurs coming out of here could be very successful. There is no reason. In fact, as you were telling a mythological story about this whole churning thing, I mean, it just reminded me of the fact that those of you who know this story in Mahabharata, which is one of the greatest epics in Indian history, when the war happens between the good and the bad, eventually this guy who's the very powerful guy, Bhim, who had to fight this evil guy, Duryodhan, he just backs off. He says, I don't have the strength. I don't think I'll be able to do it. So then Lord Krishna actually wakes up and comes to him and says, hey, you have the strength. You have the muscle power. You have, the confidence. You have everything. He just boosts his confidence and then say, you can go and fight this guy and you can kill him. So the same way, you guys have all these assets. You have Jabil, you have Home Shopping Network, you have Citrix, you have all these expertise. You have to figure out how you leverage the experience that people have and bring them here and guide the next set of these entrepreneurs to build the next Google of the world or the next Microsoft of the world. And I'm sure you guys can do that, and I'll be more than happy to help you in any which way So please count on me on that. And congratulations once again for this conference, and thank you for inviting me.